In the next part of this tutorial, I have now decided on what my advertisement is going to say. It's really simple, but basically I have a little cat that will grow up bigger, and then it's going to say the reason why is because of Purina cat food. So I just have to turn off all the other layers, and then there's the last screen. Now, one of the things that I want to do before I start to animate this is actually see what it would look like just static. So we're going to use a particular feature of Photoshop, and that feature is called layer comps. So if we go up to layer comps, what we're going to do is start to organize those things that we know we should organize. And by the way, I have this little object here, which is this arrow, and I didn't turn that into a smart object. I really should. So let's go ahead and convert that to a smart object. Now I've got my text here. Let's see, this is the arrow, find out how, rounded rectangle, and Purina logo. So I know these three are going to kind of belong together. So I'm going to group those together, and this is going to be actually, you know what? I probably won't group those together. What I will probably group together, there we go, I'd have to undo, is the arrow, find out how, and the rounded rectangle. So it is the right three. Okay, yeah, because that's those three items I need to make a group. I was thinking I didn't have it right. This is the button, because I want the ability to turn those on and off and move them all together as one object very easily. Then I've got the Purina logo, I've got that all together, and I should probably turn off that text, although you can't actually see it here. So what I'm going to do is create a starting point. So let's go back and start with this. We need to start off with that. So I'm going to create a new layer comp, and this is going to be the start. The next one, I could have actually called that kitten. I'll create another one here. And then I'll do one for the large. Large cat. Now, I'm going to turn that off. Let's see, I need to have the large cat, that. So then the rest of that gets turned on. Actually, I should probably just have that first, Purina and that. And then end 2. So here are my different sections. I first start off with that. I go to the medium cat. I go to the large cat. I go to the end one. And I go to the end 2. And what I've done is I've decided all the things that turn on, what order they turn on. Now, we could try and organize these into folders and everything else, but it could get kind of complicated because of the fact that sometimes you need certain layers on top of other layers and things like that. I did make that button a group because I know that I always want that to move together, and that could be important. So let me go ahead and save this. I'm going to save it as step 3 at this point because I'm making sure that I save files that I can go back to. And now we are ready to animate. So we need to bring up the window menu and the timeline. And in this one, what we're going to do is create a frame animation. So you might be on video timeline at this point. Make sure that you're on create frame animation and then click on that button. Now, since we have these frames, it's really easy for us to do with these layer comps, So I'm going to go back to layer comp and click on start. Then I'm going to go to the next one and click on medium cat. Go to the next one. Click on large cat. Go to the next one. Create a new frame. Click on end 1. Go to the next one and click on end 2. So now I have just created a series of frames that go straight from the layer comps. So I'm not having to fiddle with each one and figure out which one to turn on and off and everything else. In fact, one of the things that you'll notice about making these is that you have visibility, position, and appearance that you can change. Well, it just so happens that That's exactly what you get to work with here. If I was to tween an animation, you'll see I can do position, opacity, and effects. So these pretty much go together really well about where the position is and whether it's on or off, and also the opacity, which is the actual physical opacity versus whether it's on or not. If we turn something off, then it is considered zero opacity, at least for the animation. Anyway, this now happens, and if I was to play it, I might want it to loop forever, and let's just see what happens. Obviously, that is not a very good ad. So I'm going to pause that or stop it, and what I'm going to do is select all of these by clicking on one and shift clicking on the last. And let's change it to something like 0.2, and let's see if that works better. Okay, that's still a little bit too fast. So let's change it to 1 second apiece. Okay, so maybe still not right. What we want is maybe that it starts off a certain way. Maybe it starts off at 2 seconds, then it goes 1 second, 1 second, or maybe it needs 2 seconds there. Maybe this is going to be one quick. 1 second, 1 second, 2 seconds. Then that will come up quickly, and then this will stay here for 5 seconds. So let's see that. And I think that is a lot better. Now we've adjusted the timing of the messages so we can actually read them. Your pet needs food that grows with them. Purina knows this too. Find out how. So we're much more obvious about our messages, and we're making it so that people can read these messages pretty easily. Now there is one last thing that I forgot to do. I forgot to put an outline around this particular advertisement. Because it has a white background, it's really best practice to put an outline around it. I could adjust some spacing as well. It's not perfect, I can tell. But here's one of the things that I actually did this on purpose to wait, because you've got to be careful about this. In this case, it's going to be to our benefit. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to select everything with Control A, and I'm going to go up to Edit, Stroke, and I'm going to do 2 pixels. What this has done is created a really quick little stroke for me, which I may or may not be able to see. You might need to zoom in a little bit if you want to see just a little faint black outline around there. But since this layer was created after I made my animation, you'll notice when I go to each of my layers, as well as going to each of my frames rather, as well as going to each of my different layer comps, you'll notice that this particular layer that we just created, which is going to be called our border, was automatically added everywhere. Now, when you only have 5 layers, that's not a big deal. But if you had 50 or 5 timelines or 5 frames, that'd not be a big deal. But if you had 50 frames and you created a layer after the fact, after doing the animation, that all of a sudden appeared on every single layer, that could be a real issue that you'd have to deal with. So best practice is for you to create all of your layers and animate everything after you've created everything and you've made sure that you have all the graphics. And that's really why you create the layer comps as well, because the layer comps gives you that starting point for your animation so that you know exactly where you're going to go with the animation, so that when you get to your timeline, you can focus on the animation and timing. Now, the last thing that we're going to do with this is add a little bit more animation to it. So one of the things I like is if I'm going to animate, if I'm going to have this appear to be like growing from a small cat to a larger cat, it might be nice to have maybe a little transition between them. So I'm going to go to one of the two, doesn't really matter, and click on this little button which says Tweens Animation Frames, and I'm going to say let's use the previous frame. I'm going to do 5 frames in between, and it's going to do basically pretty much just opacity. And you'll see now it will show me an example of it actually getting bigger. Now, since these are frames in between two keyframes, we might want to go ahead and make those take less time. Now I'm going to go to the last one, the last big cat. I'm going to use the previous frame, 5 frames in between, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So let's see what it looks like now. We're at the end of the ad. At the beginning, this is what we get. And of course, if I was seeing this at 100% size, that looks pretty good with a little transition. Now, I do want to point out that these types of transitions, these type of tweens, especially fading in and out, do make it larger for when you actually export your animated GIF. But we're actually now at the point where we can save our animated GIF. So I'm going to go ahead and save my file before I go to save my GIF. And if I go to File, Save for the Web, here's where we have the ability to choose GIF as our format. And now we need to start playing with things. Now you'll notice I've got 16 colors to start off with, and I see a lot of dithering in here. If I changed it to 8 colors, you'll notice it looks terrible. So let's take it up to 64 or even higher. It looks like I might need to go to up to about 128. And that's because I have a lot of graphics in here, a lot of photos. If I used photos, it's probably even better to take it up to a high number, but we do want to look at the size of this GIF file. Right now it's showing that this is 297K. If I change it down to 128K, it goes down to 240, which honestly is not that much smaller. Now we could see multiple versions if we wanted to check which settings the different ones were. For example, I can do this GIF 128 dithered. I can do this one, let's see, so that is showing me this one. This one will be GIF 32 dithered. So it's showing me what the different file size would be and quality of the output. But, usually we're going to go with the optimized version and just change the numbers that we have instead of looking at multiple different ones. Now, I should point out that we can dither it or not dither it. In the case of this, the dithering applies a little bit of dot pattern to this, which usually is going to work out to our favor. Not always, but usually. I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way to 256 colors because I'm not really too concerned with the file size at this point. Because we have photos, once again, we have to have a wider color palette. Now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save it in the folder that I had with everything else. Hopefully I can find out where I have these things. This is the only thing I don't like about the save for the web, and that is that it doesn't go automatically to the folder that you were using. So I need to find out where I've put these things, which is kind of crazy, honestly. So I believe this is it. And now I've saved that file. I can come back and take a look at it. And there is the GIF that I've created in the advertisement. So in the next tutorial, we're going to take a look at animating this in a completely different way. So let's go on.